welcome back. Time for another episode of CRM Radio. Today, the voice of the ever-changing customer relationship space with the man who's, well, always trying to change it a bit himself here, Mr. Paul Peterson.
Hi, Paul. Yeah, we do try to change.
You're always trying to adapt and update and do things here. I have to ask you a question. Can I ask you a personal question here today before we start? You're calling in on Skype today here. You have a little, everybody else has a picture of themselves. You get a picture of a little bird on the site there. What's the story behind that?
A ruby kinglet.
A ruby
kinglet. It was a great photo that friend I bird watched with. We were walking through a forest. He caught it. I didn't see it until after he had had the lens pointed, but just an absolutely great photo and great little bird to see out in a forest preserve.
And where do you see these birds? I don't see these in Southern California here.
Yeah, they're in the Midwest, Chicago. Chicago has one of the best migratory bird stops in the world. They come from Canada in the north. They stop in Chicago on Lake Michigan and then go down to Texas and South America. So
all
right on our lakefront. It's Montrose Harbor. And great bird watching in the city.
All right. Well, we're going to have to find out if your guest knows anything about ruby kinglets or if she's a bird watcher herself here today. Probably has other expertise.
So, Joanne Wilson, president of the Trainers Group from way up north, eh?
Hey. Hi, Paul. How are you?
I'm well, Joanne. Thanks. Yeah, are you a bird watcher, Joanne?
No. Well, we did actually go to Costa Rica and, looked up for an hour. And Bill said, we paid $40 to look up to see where that, Costa Rican bird is. I think that's the last bird watching we've done. We're mostly now taking care of a new puppy in the house.
New puppies. America has about 742 species that you can see, and that would include Alaska and some places that many people aren't able to see. You go to Costa Rica, and they have about 700 species living in that one little contained country. Just absolutely amazing. 24, I think more than 24 varieties of hummingbirds, where in Illinois there's only one.
And we did see hummingbirds up close. There were about 8 of them, and they were feeding. And probably that was more interesting than looking for this long-tailed bird in Costa Rica that my sister said we have to see. We did finally see him.
The Quetzal or
they did show.
The Quetzal?
Yes.
Yeah, very famous there. And, of course, my kids were just enthralled with seeing a toucan. There it was, right in the tree, a toucan. Just absolutely amazing. Wow. Birding is such an amazing, while many people have done it for years, technology now is advanced. You have eBird where people report what they see. And from these eBird reports, they can track population. But they have some wonderful maps of migration, and you can see these birds of different types as they stop in Chicago or as they stop in Florida and then move on to South America. So technology, part of bird watching has become technology. And of course, with my Skype ID, the photo there, that was taken with a extremely expensive, heavy to carry lens, but you're not with an iPhone. Well, let's talk about something else about maybe bird in hand. Joanne, you've been in CRM. You represent, GoldMine, Sugar CRM. So you've been in CRM a long time. You've been in training and business process, right? And long time partner of GoldMine. But today, GoldMine is a standalone, I'll call it best of breed sort of product. But there's a lot of interest in how do you get that to work with some other things that you're doing. And you've developed an integration with QuickBooks. So I thought maybe we'd talk about what's the power of that. Why, with CRM, you talk to people, you get an order. It comes in via fax or an email or whatnot, right? Maybe your website. But what's the value of having your accounting system linked to your CRM?
Very often, people cannot get access to their QuickBooks because they don't have authorization. And so here they have the contact record, but they have no idea, did the invoice go through, the sales order? What's happening? Are they paid? Even the sales reps and the sales managers, they just don't know. So it is a one-way export from QuickBooks to GoldMine to the contact record, updating, all kinds of information that maybe the sales manager and the sales reps wouldn't mind seeing. And that's why we got into it, and more people wanted to just know what was going on with that account, where the sales estimate and the sales paid. They would know, okay, it's paid, so I will be getting my commission. And so everybody needs to know what's going on. I would say maybe 2 or 3 people are authorized to actually go into the QuickBooks and do anything with it. Now, the other thing that it can do is when you make a new record in GoldMine, it actually creates the record in QuickBooks. Doesn't put everything into it. Somebody who manages the QuickBooks still has to go in and make sure all the details are put into the QuickBooks, but the record is created so it's not double, data entry. And then we have the other side of it that it syncs. So QuickBooks QB Gold is what we call it, syncs all records from QuickBooks to GoldMine manually, or it can do it automatically.
And functionality, you have GoldMine, so you have good contact management. But from a CRM perspective, is that the trend today, that all CRMs are linked to the accounting system?
They're getting more and more that way. The requirement is we want to see more. Because once they start using their CRM and they're starting to put in not just glorified address book information, but real activities that are tracked, scheduled activities, they're completed. They're looking at the whole picture in one central repository. And I think GoldMine has really stood the time to really be able to work and integrate QuickBooks details information back into GoldMine. We don't go both ways. We don't actually do much except making the record. We don't put stuff in GoldMine that feeds into QuickBooks because it wouldn't be allowed. But going the other way updates the people who are working the CRM.
Yeah, so in your accounting system, you've got certain processes and so forth, so you don't want things to go in too easily, right? You want to have some control over that process. But the visibility, so what you're saying is that now within an account, I can see orders that are pending, invoices that are open. It would seem, too, that it would lend itself to some summary information. So, for example, with your knowledge of QuickBooks, are you able to produce summary information? For example, sales year-to-date for a client or something like that.
Absolutely. In GoldMine, we've actually made a tab, and it's a QB Gold tab. And in there, we have a whole range of information that we can pull it from our QuickBooks. And one thing that's interesting is as much as we can pull that information, sometimes people have wanted more. Okay, we want other pieces of the data. And so Anuj is our programmer, and he built this program, and he's able to do a little bit of customization for the client if they're looking for something just a little bit different.
Yeah, and let's talk about what you and I were at a QuickBooks advisor event last spring, thousands of advisors representing many, many clients. What does somebody need to be ready in QuickBooks? What are some best practices to be ready for integration with?
Okay, so we don't have it on the cloud yet, so it's not cloud ready. So, but if they're using QuickBooks Desktop, we're hoping that by the end of March, Anuj, again the programmer, has something that works for everything. They don't even have, if they have desktop, they don't even have to worry about what version it is. It works on all versions. Older versions, current versions, but still desktop.
Still a large install base of QuickBooks Desktop. Even though QuickBooks has had a cloud version for a while, it takes a long time for those folks to migrate, right? So, but is there anything, you mentioned versions, but from a setup perspective, is there anything people can do to say, hey, my QuickBooks ready to share information? Is there something you've had to do to help them organize to make that possible?
So the only thing we do is we have Anuj go and have a look. Basically set up a 15-minute interview and go and have a look and see what the need is, what they're thinking of. By that time, we've already done a demo to show them what we can bring back into GoldMine, but he will actually check to make sure the system is ready to go, checks on licenses, but he doesn't spend a long time with the client on the phone. He's just going to have a look at a couple of things because the version doesn't matter anymore, and the details that we're bringing over, we've demoed it, so we're always happy to show how it works. And then, if he hears what they're saying as a needs analysis for 15, 20 minutes, they may say, but Anuj, I want this to come over. And I don't see it in the demo. Can you bring that over? All he does is matches the file name to the file name in GoldMine. He makes a new field in GoldMine to receive it. Sky's the limit in what they can bring over. But some of them have been asking, but now I want to bring some other information back to QuickBooks. We don't do it because the authorized people using QuickBooks don't want it to, they don't want to do that. They don't want it to do that, meaning if we went into the record and said Barney Rubble has a different address, we're not actually trying to synchronize that information and update it that way.
Yeah, and some of that you don't want because very often an address that you may be selling to, i.e. I go here to,
exactly.
To talk to them, is maybe very different than the billing address.
Right.
So you don't want to overlay those too quickly, right?
No.
And that brings up another great point, which is that very often the accounting systems, right, aren't usually very good contact managers. There usually is a space for an accounts payable person, or maybe it's just accounts payable at ABC Corp, right? So you don't always get the marketing side in your accounting system. So that's why you need the CRM at the front end, right?
Right, exactly. So, we're always looking to see where the match is. As soon as you open QB Gold and we're sitting on a brand new record, we're checking actually to see if that record is already in QuickBooks. It will do that check as well. It doesn't do a million things, but it does some good things very well.
Yeah. How long has this been available for? And we're talking today very specifically about something to integrate with GoldMine, because we thought, here is a piece of information our listeners should hear about. If you're using GoldMine or considering it, you can now link it to the one of the most popular packages. We did the same approach with Constant Contact, a leading email provider. We built an integration. If you have an account, we can use that and send out your emails and then receive stats back, right? So the GoldMine approach was, let's work with a couple of the leaders. What's sort of the most creative use of that integration that you've seen in your customer base that a client wanted and you were able to deliver? I don't know if that's a fair question, but
it might not be a question for me, because very often Anuj will go in, and I think what's happened is it's just pulling the information, and people are more aware. When they go into the history tab, into the pending tab, they see these activities that are coming over from QuickBooks. I think the benefit is just quick access to the information. And the benefit to the sales rep and sales manager is just being updated and not having to go back and ask somebody in accounting, hey, what's happening to this client or that client, and getting some sort of email with the other 200 emails that are coming through. So it is totally about certain comfort of what the sales rep wants to see. What QuickBooks does, it does it well, but if there, as I say, if there are other fields, Anuj has been touching each time he does the installation or the integration. There's just something a little extra he tweaks, but not time-consuming.
Yeah, we've seen people who maybe stored a phone number in a field that was labeled something else, and they may need to move some of that around a little bit to get their data a little bit more in conformity. But at the core level, you're saying it's pretty standard across all the installations.
It's pretty standard. He's not doing a whole lot of customization. If he is, they need to wait for the next version. But if it's something minor, he's more than willing to go in and do an adjustment on it, which I think is great. He's sort of on the fly, All
right, well, we're going to take a break here, and then when we come back with Joanne Wilson, president of the trainers, we'll talk a little bit more about some recommendations on how best to use CRM, GoldMine in particular, and QuickBooks and the integration there. So we'll be right back.
We know you rely on your CRM system, and it's usually a love-hate relationship. Most CRM systems, well, let's face it, they're expensive. They're hard to understand. People don't use them properly. And you're probably paying for features that you don't even want. If that's your case, then maybe it's time to simplify. It's time to get more from your CRM. Why don't you go back to the original? Trust GoldMine. We helped pioneer the industry, after all. GoldMine CRM is, well, it's simple, it's affordable, and it's proven. If all those sound appealing to you, if you're just tired of the CRM headaches that you're getting from trying to implement something that's just too complicated, too expensive, and too much for you to figure out, then why not go back to the original? Visit GoldMine today, goldmine.com. Okay, we're back with Paul and his guest.
And by the way, it's a ruby-crowned kinglet is the correct.
Ruby crowned kinglet. I'm going to go Google that right now. Look up here.
Go. Yes.
It didn't sound like you convinced Joanne that she should run out and start to be a bird watcher. It sounds like one of the only experiences.
With a
They
puppy,
have to come into my yard without an invitation.
There you go.
My family enjoys seeing me in a floppy hat and binoculars and white socks and sandals.
I think I've seen you in a movie, Paul.
I think so.
There is a great movie with Jack Black and Steve Martin, A Big Year, and it was about a contest there were 2 or 3 birders who set out, and this happened 4 or 5 years ago, to set out to see the most birds ever. And one of them did. And The Big Year was based on that person's book. It's a fun read. And I'm just going to mention this just in general interest. One of the best books I've ever read in my life, literature-wise, is a book called H is for Hawk. And it's about a woman's relationship with her father and how she came to raise a grouse hawk in the UK. And it is just absolutely wonderful. So birds, can bring so much. In fact, Paul, as you know, I'm a Beatles fan, and I don't know if Joanne knows that, but
we got bugs and birds. That's the 2 commonalities here.
In the Beatles, they play a lot of bird sounds in various different pieces of music. So it's somehow that all works for me. It all fits and all is right with the universe. But so Joanne, at my side, we get asked a lot, do you have an integration with QuickBooks, and we can point to you. But I still hear a lot that people don't do it. So in your experience, what's sort of been the hurdles that people have faced? It's kind of like a checkbox item. They want it, but they don't seem to get around to doing it. Any guidance on?
I tell you why. Because the accounting department, who is in charge of QuickBooks, not the sales team, not the marketing team, they're very tight with their information. They're very restrictive. They're authorized. They don't have a need to dump the information to CRM. But when you have a big voice from a VP of sales or a sales manager who says, we just need to see more. So accounting doesn't care, but these guys do. So I think we have to talk to more sales managers. Would this help your team to figure out what is in the pipeline, who they have sold to, have a look at year-to-date sales, get them more information and more excitement that they're going to use their CRM and rely on it, with a little more emphasis, rather than running back and forth to accounting. Face it, accounting doesn't need the call. They don't need the email. They don't need the call. They're busy enough, and they don't care. But the people who are using CRM care.
Yep. And so if you enter the orders into QuickBooks, there they are. So that just goes along, and the salesperson has the visibility. I know with like QuoteWorks, for example, you can prepare a quote. That's a product we use. We prepare the quote, and it automatically creates the sales forecast, right? So you were talking about getting visibility to pipeline. Does QuoteWorks allow the same thing, that you can create a forecast sale?
I think it does. QuoteWorks is an amazing integration. If we could get, again, the salespeople, user adoption is always the hardest. And I'm finding user adoption from a distance away from us. In our model, we want them trained. We want them to have an administrator who wants these things for her people. If I am the only one training them, I want to train someone who will train their organization. The benefit of that is they start listening to this person, and then they start to have requests. And every month, give them another little bit, a tidbit of something they're not using in GoldMine, so that they can get that user adoption up, because that's always the issue. And it doesn't matter even what CRM it is. User adoption is always the problem.
Let's raise this a couple of levels. So first off, out of the integration that we developed, you established that giving the salespeople or anybody who interacts with a client, right, visibility to invoices, things of that sort, is a big time saver, because now they can see what's closed, what's open, and what the customer has purchased, right? You can see that right there with the link. You have the ability to create a transaction in QuickBooks. I wanted to mention one other practice. We touched on it, and that is that make sure in your CRM started out, the first 2 letters are, what do the first 2 letters stand for, Joanne?
Customer relationship.
Yeah. So this is like an Ellen quiz. I'll hit a button and send you down a chute if you get one wrong. But, it's customer relations. And the idea is, very often the CRMs are used to keep track of prospects, which is, of course, future customer. But make sure your contacts out of your accounting system, right, are in your CRM. That is my number one best practice, tip. So whether it's QuickBooks or whatever.
Also, Paul, make sure your vendors are in your CRM so that the people who are purchasing, not always the accounting people, put some vendor information, but only certain people can see those records. Because, we can curtain, these 3 people can see the vendor information. Why not bring that over? Why not bring that information?
Putting vendors in the CRM, and that way you can keep track of your communications with them. We have, in many companies, make sure that your accounting department, right, has access to the CRM so that they can use that to call people who are perhaps in arrears, but they can record the notes. Exactly. And so that's available on the account. Some CRMs, GoldMine, I caution on this one, but you have the ability to put a little alert. I would tend to say call it something like accounting review or something like that, as opposed to some sort of flashing red, because credit situations are very fluid, right? 1 minute you owe money that, as soon as you pay it, it's gone and it's zero. But you can put little flags in there that just say, the account's maybe over 60 days or something like that. It starts to alert people to the financial relationship, and the financial team can use the CRM to follow up on billing, if there's a billing mistake or late pay, right? Those are all good things. And then if you've got the accounting contacts, your billing contacts, you can include them in marketing efforts. And the converse is true. If you think that you have everything you need in your accounting system, then you're missing out on being able to market to the people who actually buy. So very often they're not in the accounting system. So you want to have that full view of the account, right? The person who influences your orders, the person who handles it from accounting. You mentioned summary information. It'd be great to know what somebody's purchased year to date, right? So clients should look for that kind of summary information to be available. And some companies, advanced, would say, what should this company be buying? So for example, that they buy $1 million worth of widgets a year, but you're only getting $10,000 worth of business. What can you do to grow your share of their they're dealing with somebody else, right? So some metrics like that could help, and they're hard to get maybe, but if you get them from the sales team, then you're on your way. Well, so Joanne, we had a little bit of a freewheeling conversation about integration with QuickBooks, which you've built. Where can people reach you? Trainers.com?
They can reach us at thetrainers.ca because we're up in Canada, but we do a lot of business in the States, a lot. But can I say one thing? Our future, just a sideline, our future is to integrate with a texting tool. That's the big demand out there, and with IP phones. So maybe we can talk about that in a couple of months about how's that API going. Because every time I talk to a client, they're looking for that texting to get right to the contact and not wait till the email gets picked up.
Yep, so we'll pick that one up on messaging. And by the way, we have a webinar on February 27th. You can go to goldmine.com and register for that, where Joanne and her team will be showing that integration one-on-one. Paul, I got 2 inches of snow, but I can look out at the lake. Surf's up.
You've been listening to another example of CRM Radio Today, brought to you by the good folks at GoldMine, right here on the Funnel Radio channel for at-work listeners like you.